All right, we're finally here through an unbelievably run of bad luck at the 11th hour and 59th minute. I lost my audio, but now we are here live on startelegram.com for our first of hopefully many Ask Me Anythings. And when I say ask me anything, it only means Nick Harris, Dallas Cowboys beat writer and Emmy winner extraordinaire,
Thank you.
not
Thank
Mac
you.
Engel. I'm basically like a yuck monkey who's designed to sit here and hopefully take your questions and relay them to the expert in the room, the Emmy Award winning Nick Harris. Nick, from what I understand, you won an Emmy Award. Is that correct?
Yeah, won it last night. Very blessed, very honored. It's my first one. It's very cool. I'm appreciative of it. I'll say that.
What are you going to do with it?
It's a great question. So I'm moving houses tomorrow. So it's sitting in its box right now. I brought it out to put on the coffee table for now, and I'm gonna have to box it back up and figure out what to do with it in my new house. But that's tomorrow's problem.
Okay, well then, what did you win it? Well, we'll tell the good folks who are watching. Ask Me Anything on YouTube or anything else. Hopefully, a million other platforms. What did you win it for? Did you
Yes,
have a guest shot on Friends or something like that?
no, that they gave me the worst Emmy for that. I don't know what the opposite of an Emmy would be, but my acting skills would be that. No, when I was working with the Dallas Cowboys media team, I wrote a documentary on Marion Barber, the former Cowboys running back who passed away a few years ago. Had a great career here in Dallas, and was really blessed and honored to be able to tell that story. And we won the Emmy for Best Sports Documentary, and very, very excited about that. And it was a nice bow on the project. It was super rewarding all the way through, and glad we got to wrap it up with that.
So, if people want to watch that, Marion Barber was a fascinating guy. I had a chance to cover him as a beat reporter in his first few seasons with the team, and he was a really interesting guy. And I certainly felt for him near the end of his life when I found out exactly what was going on with him. Where can people find that documentary, Nick?
Yeah, it's free on YouTube, on the Dallas Cowboys YouTube page. You can search Barber, Do What You Love. That's the name of the documentary. It's about 51 minutes, and I promise you'll be locked in all the way through. Our editor did a good
job. So if the Emmy Award is not yet on eBay or Facebook Marketplace or some of these other places where you can monetize your big win, I'm assuming then that you're just going to carry it around and shove it in people's faces at any opportunity, like, hey, Nick Harris, Emmy Award winner. Just not really to put them in their place, but just to sure they know, whomever it is that you're talking to, that you're an Emmy Award winner and they're not.
No, I maybe to my mom, but she'll appreciate it, because that's part of her achievement as well. So no, it'll stay in my house in one spot. Let it collect dust.
Congratulations. That's a neat achievement. You should be really proud of it because I'd seen it and it was good. And I'm really happy for you that you got that. All right. So let's move on with Ask Me Anything here on StarTelegram.com, YouTube as well. Nick, a lot going on with the Dallas Cowboys these days because thankfully, finally, we are through the annual torture that is NFL preseason, fake, horrible, trash-tacular football. Yeah. Cut down day was today, so that means the Cowboys and every other team in the NFL had to reduce their rosters down to 53 players. Is that what we're down to now?
Correct.
53 players. Some notable player roster adjustments, movements, whatever you want to call them. Obviously, there is the constant shadow of Micah Parsons and his contracts that continues to lurk over this team far longer than I think anybody, even somebody sort of jaded and cynical about it. Even this has gone longer than I thought it would have. But we are now a little bit more than a week, 8 days away from the start of the regular season when the Cowboys go to Philadelphia to kick off the start of the 2025 NFL regular season against the defending Super Bowl champions. But let's go over roster cuts while we're here. A lot of notable ones, the ones that I wrote down that kind of caught my eye. I'm not sure why they did it. But, Nick, they brought in veteran Lyle Collins, a player that they had already dumped once before. They said goodbye to him. C.J. Goodwin, a player who's been here for a while. Defensive back Will Grier, the quarterback that you have mentioned. Maybe they could slip through on waiver wires and they could slide him back in here as a practice squad guy. Running back Deuce Vaughn, local guy, went to Kansas State. Dad's a scout for the team, never really got any extensive time. Trayshawn Holder, a wide receiver they liked, not enough to keep. Tight end Princeton Fant. How do I pronounce his last name?
Fant.
Fant, let him go. And then the other big one to me was the one that they knew they were going to do. He's going to come back. They put him on injured reserve with the idea with the whatever the stipulation, the one where they're going to is the former wide receiver from the Carolina Panthers, whom they traded a 4th-round pick to acquire last season, and virtually nothing for this team, and Jonathan Mingo. Is there anything that they did today, Nick, that really caught you off guard and you didn't see coming at all?
Yeah, if I could throw a couple caveats in a couple of those
sure,
guys.
Absolutely.
What you can do now, and I'm going to call this segment roster gymnastics here because we're going to do a lot of flipping and twirling. So when you're building a 53-man roster, more often than not, you have a few guys that need to go on injured reserve. Mm-hmm. You can only put 2 players on injured reserve before the 53-man roster so that they do not count against it, if that makes sense. If there's any more than 2, they have to be on the 53-man roster for at least 24 hours, and then you can put them on IR and flip them back with somebody else. So in the case of CJ Goodwin, he will be back on the roster after 24 hours. They are going to exchange him with rookie running back Phil Maffa. Phil Maffa dealing with some shoulder issues. He had a shoulder issue last year at Clemson that he played through, so maybe some things that he's still dealing with there. CJ Goodwin will be back on the roster here in about 24 hours. It's just kind of the gymnastics you have to play. Another one to keep an eye on, cornerback Kalen Carson. He's been dealing with a hyperextended knee since the beginning portions of training camp. He will most likely flip out with offensive lineman Hakeem Adeniji. Now, since CJ Goodwin and Hakeem Adeniji are both veterans, they have played more than 4 seasons in the NFL. They are not subject to waivers. So they were released and they are free to sign with any team. So it's basically what the front offices do in situations like this, and every team does it. It's kind of a handshake deal like, hey, we'll sign you again tomorrow. Don't sign anywhere else. I've always wondered if maybe that's gone wrong at some point in time because it really is just kind of a handshake deal, and then they go away and they come back 24 hours later. But that's something to keep an eye on. Maffa and Carson will go on IR tomorrow. So Mingo, you mentioned Jonathan Mingo. He had the PCL sprain in the second preseason game against the Baltimore Ravens. He will start the season on the injured reserve. He was one of those 2 guys that they designated. The other one was defensive end Peyton Turner. He's been dealing with some broken ribs during training camp. So those 2 guys, they will miss at least 4 games to start the season. The same will be said for Phil Maffa and Kalen Carson. And then here in about 24 hours, that's when you will get the final 53-man roster. But as of right now, you can look at 51 of these names, and they're pretty certain. Now, Will Greer, he will go on the practice squad. He is not subject to waivers, so he will be able to sign to the practice squad as early as tomorrow. But as far as some of these rookie undrafted guys, Trayshawn Holden, he is subject to waivers. I think one waiver claim to keep an eye on is a wide receiver Jalen Brooks, a big special teams player for this team. He was a 7th-round pick in 2023. He has stuck around on the roster for all 17 games in the past 2 seasons. He's missed a couple games here and there with the concussion I think he had last year, but for the most part has been pretty healthy. He lost his spot to Ryan Flanoy during this cut down. Now, the Tennessee Titans have the number 1 spot on the waiver wire. The Tennessee Titans have former Cowboys special teams coordinator John Fossil over there now. He really liked Jalen Brooks in his time here. I would expect the Titans to maybe put in a claim for Jalen Brooks. So that's one to keep an eye on at least of right now. But otherwise, they're going to look to retain most of these guys on the practice squad.
You mentioned something that I do remember it happening, and it wasn't with a significant player. But I do remember, I forget this, the Cowboys did what they did now to CJ Goodwin, which is okay. Because I forgot about that rule. It's been so long since I worried about it. I forgot about it. they had an agreement, Nick, with this guy. Again, I can't remember who it was. It was a lower tier player, and they said, okay, let's go. Let's let the 24-hour period pass. They put you back on the team. Somebody else grabbed him, and they were mad. They were mad, and it was like a special teams guy. But I remember Todd Williams, who's obviously a long-time Cowboys front office guy, very involved with contracts and personnel. I remember Todd being pretty hot about that. It doesn't happen very much, but the whole idea is, wait a minute, this is done. We everybody knows what we're doing here. Why would you do that? And the player's point was, well, they offered me basically a chance to play. And the Cowboys' point was, you were going to be a depth guy. We needed you. We were counting on you. And he was like, sorry, peace out. So it does happen. It doesn't happen very much. As I sit here,
It has happened each of the last 2 years for the Cowboys. They lost a defensive end in 2023, Isaiah Land, to the Indianapolis Colts. And then in 2024, they lost a safety, Julius Wood, to the Titans, oddly enough. Both of those guys were waived yesterday, though. So all those riots that happened when those two guys were let go and then claimed, they're awfully quiet these days.
Deuce Vaughn, it was an interesting story. It was a great story when they selected him in day 3 of the draft 2 years ago, but he never got on the field. And to me, it looked like I know you and I talked about this during the preseason game. I talked about it with some other people. I don't think there was any way that you could have him on your team and have Kevontae Turpin on your team too. You can't have 2 small guys that short and only one of whom plays special teams. And for some reason or another, clearly they made the right decision with Turpin. He's been a dynamic returner. The Cowboys didn't see enough from Vaughn, but he stuck around for a lot longer than I thought he would. Do you think he'll get picked up by anybody else?
I think there's a potential for it. Again, he hasn't played a lot of special teams, and the special teams roles that they've tried to put him on, it hasn't worked out. So he would need to prove some special teams value elsewhere to be able to be picked up. But he hopped onto the practice squad last year and he cleared waivers. So I would anticipate he clears waivers again, but that's certainly a name to keep an eye on.
I'm assuming some of this is done as a favor to his dad. Is that correct?
I wouldn't necessarily say so.
So?
I think they've done a really good job of separating church from state with that situation. I have to give them credit for that.
Some irony there, considering the owner is also the general manager and his daughter and 2 other sons works for the team, but that's here nor there. As I'm sitting here looking at the depth chart.
We got a question here, Mac.
Oh, great. I can't see. Okay, this is from Chris Baller. I dig that name, Chris Baller. You think we got a chance with the Ravens defensive tackle they just waived? Chris Baller, you couldn't have asked a human being better suited for this question than Nick Harris, and I'm not being facetious at all. Emmy winner, Nick Harris, by the way. It's very important. Emmy winner. He's going to go for an EGOT here next year. Nick, I don't even know who this guy is. They just cut a defensive tackle. You and I both know the Cowboys have no defensive tackle. Would they be in the market for that particular player? And Emmy winner, do you know his name?
Yeah, so he's talking about CJ Okoye, 6'6", 370-pound defensive tackle. He's never played in an NFL game, and there's a lot of Cowboys fans on Twitter just really liking this guy because he's 6'6", 370 pounds, and he looked good in the preseason game against the Cowboys. So I understand where the connection is being made. I can tell you that there is due diligence being done on CJ Okoye. Now, do I think he is going to be a signing for the Cowboys? I don't necessarily know at this point. I mean, it's still super early in the waiver claim process. You have 24 hours that these guys have to go through, and Will McClay and his staff are going to be here at the Star all night going through these guys. But I can tell you that due diligence is being done on CJ Okoye. I can say that confidently. However, he was born in Nigeria, so he qualifies as an international pathway program player, which means he would not count toward a practice squad. So that's something to keep in mind.
I'm assuming you can hear my attack dog.
He wants the defensive tackle too. I get it. He likes big.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. She's done this like twice on these videos where she just disregards, the professionalism that's going on here. I'm talking to an Emmy winner. I have a long talk with that dog. So we get another one?
Yeah.
Is this another question?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. Chandler, thank you very much. What about Zach Pickens from the Bears? He assumes he's an option. I think right now, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. Thanks again for the question. You can tell me if I'm wrong. Are they just looking at all giant fat guys who can stand and maybe push a pile because they don't like who they have as much as potentially the prospect of an unknown giant fat guy who can occupy some space?
Yeah, and I'll say this about Zach Pickens, third-round pick in 2023. Again, played with Eberflus, so good connection there. Chris Baller, 250. If this team wasn't swimming in defensive end talent, then I would maybe say yes, that it would be an option. But the thing is, if they go after and they get Zach Pickens to put on a 53-man roster, who are they taking off? And that would be
I can think of one.
Defensive end.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think this is probably a situation where, the talent is probably a little too rich here. However, maybe look at the practice squad tomorrow. And that could be a guy that Eberflus can maybe entice to come to Dallas and be on the practice squad. I think that connection could certainly be made.
Okay. So there's a story out of Tampa that generated a lot of interest because of the incredible size of one particular player who hasn't played at all this preseason as he is trying to get his weight under control. I can't even name him, but I've seen pictures of this guy floating around on Twitter and social media, this giant, enormous human being who's like 450 pounds. Clearly he can't play. I mean, obviously he can't play because you can't. I know there's value in being gigantic, but it's worthless if you can't play more than 2 plays. And if you're 450 pounds, you're not going to play more than 5 for the game. You're just going to be too exhausted. Nick, are they at a place with Mozzie Smith, the first-round pick from a couple of years ago, a defensive tackle, where they are going to start considering any giant body because they think that giant body is better than Mozzie Smith?
I can tell you Desmond Watson, that's who you're talking about, the undrafted rookie out of Florida. He won't be an option, but I think they are at a point now to where they are desperate for talent at the defensive tackle spot. And so much so that when they were looking for some spring league evaluations, they put a lot of intention toward the defensive tackle position. And that's why they went out and got Perrion Winfrey. And Perrion Winfrey today made the team. I think that's a guy to potentially keep an eye on to maybe unseat Mozzie Smith from his job as the season goes on.
So I'm looking at, now this is an early depth chart. It's obviously not released by the team. This is something that I saw on ESPN.com that says right now, Mozzie Smith is the starter along that defensive front. He's ahead. You mentioned Perrion Winfrey. They've got the other kid, Jay Toya. Is Mozzie Smith the starter?
I think that's a big question going into week 1. I would also throw another name into that mix is Solomon Thomas. He's been mostly the backup 3 tech to Osa Odighizuwa. Mm-hmm. However, I think they love his knacks in the run game enough to where they might try him out at a 1 tech spot. However, the idea of a 260-pound 1 tech is not very welcoming, I should say. No matter how talented Solomon Thomas is, that's an undertaking. And so the 1 tech spot is going to be a big one we look at throughout the year, whether it's Mozzie Smith, Jay Toya, Perrion Winfrey, whoever else that they add on the practice squad. It's going to be a revolving door, I fear, this year. Week 1 is going to be one of the starting spots that we are going to be focusing on the most. I will tell you that just because Mozzie Smith, we're looking in the 3rd preseason game and he's playing into the 3rd quarter. So there's clearly indecision on the count of Mozzie Smith. And I can say confidently that there was a conversation had. Is Mozzie Smith going to be on this team? They decided to keep him around. It's just because the talent in the room is super thin, but they are in desperate need of finding a 1 tech out there. No doubt.
Okay. We talked about this. You wrote about it before the Cowboys played the Baltimore Ravens in their fake second exhibition, their second fake game of the season. And Cooper Rush, their former backup quarterback, who has made a nice career for himself as a backup. So that means now they're going with Joe Milton, former New England Patriot, Michigan Wolverine. He's got a good arm. Boy, he's got a good arm. But there was nothing really I saw from him that said this guy knows how to run a professional offense for half a game or 3/4 of a game. I just saw a guy who might hit some big passes occasionally, but wasn't going to move an offense. But they're going with him. Talk me off the ledge off this, why this is a good idea.
Yeah, I can't do that for you. You're gonna have to jump off that ledge, and I might be. I think the idea with Joe Milton is the 3rd preseason game. There was a lot more consistency, and the thing that they've been trying to emphasize from a coaching standpoint is, hey, let's get this guy off to a better start, and it might be able to help him sustain drives throughout the game. And that's exactly what happened in the 3rd preseason game. They got off to a great start, opened with 2 touchdown drives. It allowed him to settle in a lot quicker. And, some of the issues that we saw in those first 2 games, we didn't necessarily see those. Now, what is the biggest issue with Joe Milton right now? It is his footwork. I understand that, you see these passes and you maybe think it's a touch issue. And, yes, it's associated touch. There's a lot that goes into it. But I think the biggest problem is his footwork. Whenever you see him airmailing throws or even underthrowing throws at times, you'll see a lot of weight on his front foot. It's almost like a 75-25 split. You would rather have that almost like a 40-60, whereas you have a little bit more on the back foot, and it allows him to kind of drive through a pass and put it into his target on that 12 to 18-inch window that they try to hit. I'm getting into the really nuanced specifics there of quarterback timing, but overall, I think with Joe Milton, if you need him to start 3-4 games this season, you're going to be holding your breath. you're going to be holding your breath. Now, if you need him to start one game because, hey, knock on wood, Dak Prescott has a concussion this week, Joe Milton's going to have to start. If you're playing the Panthers, you might be all right. If you're playing the Chiefs on Thanksgiving, then maybe watch the Lions game again. Run it on a rerun. There's going to be some holding breath if Joe Milton has to play in a meaningful game this year. I will say, I think the development will be good for him this year, but you better hope that he doesn't need to come in at some point.
I still think he's a much better option than Will Grier. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I know he was a nice college player at West Virginia, but the fascination with Will Grier reminds me of Major League Baseball teams who keep going to left-handed pitchers who have a 6.75 ERA. Like, yeah. Because I'm just like baffled by it. And I'm assuming that there was no momentum for Will Grier, even though Milton might have driven you crazy in some of those moments in the preseason. I'm assuming, Nick, that there was no momentum at all whatsoever for Will Grier, correct?
I wouldn't necessarily say there wasn't any momentum, but I think it was kind of confirmation bias on the sense of the Cowboys of like, hey, we traded for this quarterback. We're going to put him in as the quarterback 2 role, and we're not really going to turn back away from it. When you look at, training camp reps, it was majority Milton. There were a couple of sessions where Will Grier didn't get any snaps at all in Oxnard. But I think there was a little bit of a crack in the door after that second preseason game because Schottenheimer continued not to name a backup quarterback. And I think if that had persisted into the third preseason game, that we might be having more of a discussion and that Will Grier might be on this 53-man roster. But overall, it ends up being Milton.
I want to ask our fearless producer, Candy Bolton. Candy, I think you had a question up there for a second and I missed it. Did I miss that question or something? Yes, here we go. Thank you from Stephen Kaufman. All right. Thank you, Stephen Kaufman. So Deuce Vaughn was the heartstring story when his dad called him to tell him he was drafted 2 years ago. We did go over this, Steve Kaufman, but it's okay. We actually did cover this, Steve Kaufman. So what's the future for him now? The Cowboys practice squad, another team, et cetera, or is he done in the NFL? Here's my thing. I want to elaborate a little. Thanks, Steve, for the question. I do want to elaborate one thing about Deuce Vaughn. Does he have a future in the NFL? Does anybody at that height? He's not. Would they say 5'8"? To me, he was like 5'6".
No, yeah, 5. He's listed at 5'6", but I think he's close to 5'5".
So 5'5" is pretty tough. And I know a lot of us wanted to draw comparisons to Darren Sproles. Darren was an amazing player. And they both went to Kansas State. Darren Sproles was one of the most exciting players. Darren Sproles was amazing. God, he was good. And I know we wanted to, well, Deuce Vaughn's another Darren Sproles. Well, no, he's not. In this day and age of an NFL, can a 5'5" guy make it?
Yeah, it's tough, especially with the physicality that goes into this game and also the training regimens that go into these players from the time that they're 8 years old until they get into the league. I mean, we're seeing the effects of that in basketball too, to where the skill gap is just so significantly different. The athletes are only getting faster, bigger, stronger, and that's going to phase out some of these guys. A guy like Kevontae Turpin works because of his shiftiness and, his knack for being able to find holes and really burst through them. His speed is unmatched. And Deuce Vaughn's a fast guy, not to say that he's not. It's just it doesn't sound like this is probably the right place for him. Now, I think the Cowboys will try to retain him on the practice squad, certainly. And if he doesn't land here, I'm sure he will land on another practice squad somewhere else. His college career was too extensive for him not to find another spot. But he's really going to have to find a very unique system for him to work. It's going to have to be a system where there is a powerful running back and he can kind of be that number 2 gadget guy that can maybe work in the slot at receiver a little bit and out of the backfield in the return game. If there's a team that really needs a returner, I think Deuce Vaughn might be a guy that could work in that situation. But as far as the Cowboys go, I think a change of scenery might be best for Deuce Vaughn. But it wouldn't surprise me if he's back on the practice squad tomorrow.
Okay, then, as I sit here and look at this depth chart, I'm looking at this offense. And I know we talked about this before at the game. I'm looking here. This offense is actually not bad. Now, I'm assuming Javonte Williams, who I'm assuming is going to be the starting running back, along with Jaden Blue, the rookie from Texas, and Miles Sanders, the pickup from Carolina. Those are pretty competent running backs, and it'll be an upgrade over last season. I'm looking at this offensive line, Nick. Terrence Steele, Tyler Booker, first-round pick out of Alabama, Cooper Beebe in his second year out of Kansas State, Tyler Smith and Tyler Guyton. I'm assuming Tyler Guyton will progress and will be, better than he was last year. He looks different. I think he wants it. I think he'll be pretty good. This offense to me looks pretty good. The one question I have about it, and I'm kind of nitpicking here, well, obviously depth. This is not going to be a deep team, but the other one is third receiver. Is Jalen Tolbert really going to be this team's third receiver?
If we could pull up this question here in the chat, and this is actually addresses part of it. He says, Lone Sniper says, is this the last chance for Mozzie Smith and Tolbert? I think Tolbert, if we're talking about wide receiver 3, he's going to have competition for those targets. Now, last year he was a 50 reception guy. He had 7 touchdowns. In my opinion, I would have maybe looked to move Jalen Tolbert
Totally agree.
For today's 53-man cut. Could still theoretically do that. I think his value is never going to be higher than it is right now. And you have Kevontae Turpin, who's really taken a step forward this offseason in the offense. I think you're going to see quite a bit of Kevontae Turpin in this offense, as well as Jonathan Mingo, but he's going to miss the first 4 games, so you're going to have to factor that in. Is this the last chance for Jalen Tolbert? Yes, I think it is. He's going into his contract year. They've traded for a receiver over him and George Pickens. They've re-signed Kevontae Turpin for 3 years. They've invested draft capital into Jonathan Mingo. A lot of things are working against Jalen Tolbert. He's going to have to really, really show something this year to prove that he's worthy of keeping around for another 2-3 year contract. And for Mozzie Smith, I would say the same exact thing. He came close. I wouldn't say super close, but I would say he came close to not making it this time around. He's going to have to prove early in this season that he can be a starting defensive tackle for this team. If he does not, then the team is trending toward moving away from him.
Would they cut him during the season the way they did Taco Charlton? And I know Taco got sensitive about that on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, but I'm like, no, there's some and it's not just the Michigan thing. There's some comparisons to be made here. I know he doesn't want to hear that, but do you think there's any chance if he's that bad that they'll be like, okay, enough, white flag?
I just think the defensive tackle room is so bad that they don't have any business doing that. As bad as Mozzie Smith has been in comparison, in the context of being a first round pick, it would still be pretty bad if they cut him. I still don't feel like they could get a better talent at this point.
Okay, big development in the last few days. Trayvon Diggs, he of the man who decided to do the rehab and training in the offseason away from the Cowboys facility to the point where he was fined, did it on his own. Trayvon Diggs is active, even though he's coming back from a knee injury. Yeah. He is on the 53, and it looks like he will start the season in Philadelphia. Nick, did you see this coming?
This one surprised me. I maybe expected him to start the season on IR if you would ask me a couple of weeks ago, but he's been doing really well in his rehab with trainer Britt Brown out here, and it's been a positive thing. I don't think he's ready week 1, but I think he gets out there week 2, week 3, and that would be a huge plus to this team, especially at a corner spot that really needs desperate need of help as of this moment.
Well, and I want to claim some ignorance here. I'm looking at this ESPN depth chart that they put Trayvon Diggs as the starter, and I'm looking at these names. Boy, this is not a cornerback group that I feel great about. Let's address this question. Are there any names? I'm glad you asked this by Sean L. I'm not sure if that's really your last name, Sean L. Are there any other names? We talked about the guy from from Baltimore, the defensive tackle. Is there anybody else, any other name out there floating around, a quarterback maybe, that this team is looking as a backup player, whether it's cornerback or maybe even linebacker?
Yeah, it's too early to say anybody the team is looking at because they are still evaluating options. They're going through all the cuts of all 32 teams. And then typically early in the morning is when you will start to see teams really start to identify and circle in on players. They have until 3 o'clock tomorrow, and it's not a situation of, hey, we got to be first. It's not that where it kind of can be in some other instances of the sport. You have until 3 o'clock to put in a claim, and then you just wait until, maybe you're the team that gets the guy. But a couple of guys I would keep an eye on, at least from my perspective in the context of what the Cowboys need. The Baltimore Ravens released corner Jalen Armour-Davis today. I think that's an interesting one, a former 4th-round pick out of Alabama. And the Ravens just have such a good secondary. I think that's kind of a guy that, is worthy of being on a 53-man roster. It just didn't quite make it. Another corner in the AFC North, Beanie Bishop Jr. Out of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was a bright spot for them back in 2020, back last year in 2024. But they've added Jalen Ramsey this offseason. That's kind of the guy that got squeezed out as a result of that. Those would be a couple of corners I would keep an eye on. As far as the quarterback situation, I think they stick with the 3. They like Will Grier. They like that he knows the system and he's able to kind of be that safe option in case things really do go awry with Joe Milton. But I would maybe keep an eye on some corners. That would be the big thing. The cornerback spot has been emphasized to me over and over again as a position they are continuing to evaluate going into next week.
Okay, last topic we're going to cover here on Ask Me Anything. If you do have any questions, please fire them away. We've enjoyed doing this, but we're going to bring up one more topic here on Ask Me Anything with Nick Harris and whomever I am. I'm just the guy. I didn't win an Emmy. All right, I didn't want to bring this up because this is like a trip to the dentist, but we have to talk about it because as I sit here and look at the Cowboys depth chart, right defensive end, Micah Parsons, questionable. Okay, you got this one dead wrong. Not that I'm not going to rub that in your face the rest of the season. You told me Micah Parsons would be signed by like August 10th or something. Well, now this has developed into a whole Netflix series of its own, a contract dispute that has turned a little ugly, quite frankly, uncharacteristically ugly. I've sat and watched and covered these, whether it was CeeDee Lamb or Zeke Elliott. Zeke was probably the testiest one I can remember because he ran away to Mexico. But this one has gotten a little bit dirtier because Jerry Jones is going through the ESPN car wash and finding microphones to tell his sad side of the story, which, by the way, drives me crazy because I have learned this the hard way. Always take the side of the player. Always take the side of the player. And I'm not just saying that to curry favor. I'm saying that because you have more in common with the player than the employer. Always side with the player. The employer will cut the player unceremoniously. It does not matter what they do. So Micah Parsons has got to get his. He hired an agent to do the job. Now Jerry Jones apparently doesn't want to talk to the agent for whatever reason. Nick, you have outlined this now for months. Where are we now, and what are we likely to see in the next 4 to 5 days leading up to the season opener in Philadelphia?
All right, so I'm going to give some context to the situation.
How many hours are we going to need here?
I'm going to try to spark note it here. I'm going to try my best here, Mac.
Okay.
Let's go back to March. I'm sorry.
God.
Let's go back to January. I'm sorry. Jerry Jones invites Micah Parsons to his owner's suite at the Cotton Bowl. We were at the Cotton Bowl, Mac. It was a great game. And he invites Micah into his owner's suite, and they stay at the stadium longer than we stayed there that night, Mac. They stayed there until 1 a.m.
Wait. Back up. You said March. This is January.
This is January.
God, it makes it worse. Okay, keep going.
And so they had a great conversation, hearing the perspective from both sides. They both liked where that conversation went. They didn't talk contract. It was more so about his role on the team, his leadership moving forward, things and such. And then Jerry calls Micah back into his office on March 18th here at the Star in Frisco to continue that conversation. And they continue that conversation. Things are going well. Again, they're on the same page. And a little bit more of context, Micah Parsons has said that he considered Jerry Jones a friend back in December. He's like, I want to be here, and I like Jerry. We have a good relationship. This thing is going to work itself out. It's going to be fine. Not worried about it. And then the turning point of this entire situation happened in that March 18th meeting. They brought up contract negotiations. They brought up, and it's been disputed by both sides, which one actually brought it up first, if it was Jerry or if it was Micah. And what we do know is that they both engaged. They have both said that they've engaged and that they agreed on parameters of a contract. From what I have been able to pull out of the situation, it has been a 5-year contract that was discussed for an average annual value of right around $40.5 million. It's been reported in the Star Telegram back on August 3rd. You can go read it. And there was parameters that were agreed upon on that day. A handshake was made, and they were like, okay, Micah said, hey, let's get this across the finish line with my agent, and we can make this happen. A couple weeks pass, and Jerry at the owners meeting in Florida saying, yeah, we agreed on a deal, but he wants the agent to get involved. And to be honest, I don't know the agent's name. I don't know his number. I can't do that. And so
So great.
For a little bit more context, he actually did agree on a contract negotiation with the very same agent for safety Malik Hooker 2 off seasons ago. So he knows the agent. He was just being coy.
And his agent has a lot of big time clients. It's not like Jerry knows who the guy is.
He does. Now, however, let me play devil's advocate for a minute here. And this is a scary place to go if you're defending Jerry Jones. But I think there's equal blame to be placed on both sides here. On Micah's side, shouldn't have engaged in contract negotiations. If you didn't want to talk money with Jerry Jones, you shouldn't have talked money with Jerry Jones. Learn the advice from Dak Prescott back last year. Whenever they tried to talk money with him, he said, no, Todd France, that's my agent. Here's his number. Here's his name. Now you know it. I'm going to be over here. Y'all let me know when that's done. And that's how he handled it. That's how he handled both negotiations. And whenever this negotiation happened with Jerry, he engaged in it. And it was an over hour-long conversation where they talked about this contract parameters and seemed to come into an agreement. And then they walked away from that. There was no communication had between March and then the time they got to training camp. That's why I was so confident, though, coming out of that March meeting. It was like, this deal is going to get done. It's just a matter of them sitting down again. They just need to figure out their schedules to get it worked out. And that's kind of what it was in the beginning. And then it kind of got to a situation where, like, okay, we've both been in Dallas for a few weeks. Why haven't you reached out to my agent? Why isn't it pushing along further? From Jerry Jones' perspective, he's saying, hey, if I reach out to the agent's got other agendas that he's trying to get done. He's trying to get this guy paid over here. He's trying to get this guy paid over here. You know, I have this $40.5 million threshold with Micah Parsons. This agent's going to want to get me up to 42, 43. Yeah. It's happened to him before. I get it, the agent game. However, it's NFLPA rules. You have to go through the agent to get things negotiated with the player. So that's where I do put fault on Jerry. But also on the same token, I understand that, you know, him as a man, hey, I had a handshake agreement with this player on a deal. Why can't we just get it done? And so I think Jerry is trying to hold Micah to that conversation that they had back on March 18th. And he has the offer sheet here at the Star in Frisco. And he wants Micah to just come in and sign it. And it would be a record-setting contract. It would give him more guaranteed money than any other non-quarterback in NFL history. There's actually only one player in NFL history that would have more guaranteed money than Micah Parsons on a contract. Deshaun Watson, guess who his agent is? David Mulugeta. So it's kind of a standoff. It's an old Western standoff here of who's going to call and pick up the phone first. Is it going to be Micah to finally say, hey, well, I'll agree to the deal that we did back in March? Or is it going to be Jerry and be like, all right, get your agent on the phone. Let's get this thing over with. I'm going to lose a couple million every year. And so it's whose pride is going to break first. That is where we are at with this. That's why it's so tough to predict, because I think Jerry finally met his match when it came to a stubborn foe, because Micah Parsons is just as stubborn as Jerry Jones is. And I think he's finally met his match when it comes to pride in these type of situations. I'm not sure who the first one is going to be that folds in this ordeal. It could draw out 3 years, Mac. And Jerry Jones has said that he is more than willing to let that happen. They can place the franchise tag on him in 2026. They can place it on him in 2027. The team has the control here. Micah is pretty much out of leverage. The only thing he has left to do is to start holding out of games, in which case he will start missing game checks. That's $1.2 million he would miss for holding out of the game. He's not going to do that. So I'm not sure Micah Parsons has much leverage left. Jerry Jones has really been applying pressure in the media over the course of these last couple of weeks because there hasn't been great communication with him and Micah. So he's really been pressuring the media, pressuring Micah through the media. We'll see if it works, but you can tell that Jerry Jones is increasing the urgency on this situation to try to get his side done. If I had to predict a winner in this Canelo versus Mayweather fight right here, I think Jerry Jones ends up winning this battle. That's just me, though.
The owners always win. They won this.
I would disagree. Because the player certainly won with Dak Prescott last year. He got $60 million.
Oh, well, I mean, in those deals, I mean, they win. But anything where there's a salary cap, where they cap what you're making, then the owner is going to win. I mean, look.
Absolutely.
I mean, both sides are winning.
Big picture, yes. But as far as like individual battles that they fight within that, he lost to Dak Prescott. He lost to CeeDee Lamb. In some ways, right. Lost to. He lost to Zach Martin, but I think he has the advantage here in this Micah situation.
Will Micah Parsons be suited up and play Week 1 in Philadelphia?
Yes, he will.
We got one more question from Sean. I'm glad you asked this one because it involves something that the Cowboys do occasionally. Could we potentially see a trade, potentially adding somebody through a trade before the start of the regular season? Do you see a trade?
Yeah, there was a trade that came down today. I will mention that. A fifth-round pick from 2023 offensive lineman Austin Richards was traded to the New Orleans Saints for a 2028 draft pick, Mac. They traded for an 18-year-old today, Mac. Can you believe that?
Was that part of the Luka trade or something?
If they make,
is he going to the Mavericks because they don't have any draft picks for the next 10 years?
Do I see them making another trade? I do not. I think their acquisition strategy at this point is going to be through the free agents and the waiver wire. Keep an eye on the cornerback position, though. I think that's still one to keep an eye on. Stephon Gilmore is a name that has been brought up to me by fans. Like, hey, can Stephon Gilmore work his way back into this place? I've been told by everybody I talk to in this place, they love Stephon Gilmore. They don't love him at $7 million per year, though. It's going to have to come down. Hopefully his market would be able to come down to where the Cowboys can make a move on.
Great guys, great pro. Okay, last question here on Ask Me Anything. I'm not sure if you knew this or not, but apparently Taylor Swift is engaged to University of Cincinnati tight end Travis Kelce.
I'm closing the computer. Here we go.
No. Here's why. This is why we're going to answer this. This is a football question. Well, kind of. Give me an over-under on the Taylor Swift divorce tour.
Oh, my God.
I have given that woman a lot of money over the years.
Because you have daughters, right?
Yes, I have a daughter. And I'm a big fan, but I'm like, give me a break. So are we looking at 4.5, 5.5? What's the over-under on this?
Hey, man, I'm a believer in true love, man. They're going to that divorce tour, it's going to have to be the fan fiction you write, Mac.
All right, Nick, thank you very much. Thanks for everybody who watched and participated and Ask Me Anything. We're going to do this again for all of your Dallas Cowboys coverage needs. Be sure to check us out on StarTelegram.com. He's Nick Harris. I'm Mac Engel. Cowboys at Eagles next Thursday in Philadelphia.